I am Amelia, daughter to the president of a prominent corporation, and my mother is a celebrated violinist. I've always admired my parents' enduring love, but as I grew older, it was my turn to embark on the journey of marriage. My path intertwined with Elijah's when we both joined the same college club and discovered our shared passions. Little did he know, I hailed from a family of corporate prestige, a fact I kept hidden to avoid being pursued for my wealth. Our relationship blossomed from friendship to romance during our college years, leading to our decision to marry after graduation. Just a year into our marriage, we joyfully embraced parenthood when I fell pregnant. While our initial reaction wasn't as spontaneous as when we first started dating, the bond we shared as friends deepened our appreciation for each other. However, my pregnancy journey was fraught with challenges, particularly severe morning sickness that left me incapacitated for weeks. Despite Elijah's excitement, my constant nausea and exhaustion strained our interactions, making communication difficult. Yet, with the support of my doctor and family, I persevered through the toughest moments, finding solace in small comforts like jelly pouches. As I entered the second trimester, I resumed work, albeit with caution, mindful of not overburdening myself or others. Grateful for the early support from my father's company, I returned to my duties with renewed determination, balancing my professional responsibilities with the demands of pregnancy. Though the road was arduous, I found strength in the love of my husband and the unwavering support of my family. And as I navigated the challenges of pregnancy and work, I embraced each hurdle with resilience, knowing that every step brought me closer to the joy of welcoming our child into the world. Of course, I did it in a way that didn't harm the baby. After I returned to work, I worked from morning to night every day. I hadn't seen it because of my hectic schedule, but I felt different and uneasy in my relationship with my husband. Even when my illness had subsided, my husband remained silent and did not communicate with me much. Even when I tried to converse with him, he would merely say, "Oh," or "I see." My husband has recently been exceedingly busy and tense as he prepares to take over the firm. I believe that was why he was so quiet, but it appears I was mistaken. One day, while going to take out the garbage, a woman who lived on the same floor in the same apartment complex approached me unexpectedly. I had only greeted her once, so I was leery of her. She peered around, inspecting something. Then she placed her hand on my mouth. He casually whispered something like this to me. She stated that several times per week during the day or on weekdays, my husband would allow a woman into his room and she would leave about an hour later. The woman described herself to me and asked whether she was either one's younger sister. Neither my husband nor I have a younger sibling. My husband has a sister, but she is past 30. She's married and has children, and she isn't here since she and her husband moved to a rural location. She characterized the woman as a young woman in her 20s. That's why she was curious, because I'm not that insensitive. I assumed that my husband was having an affair. My spouse has recently been acting unusually apathetic toward both me and our baby. The more I investigate, the more suspicious I become. At any rate, I simply thanked the woman who informed me. I took out the trash and returned to my room. As soon as my husband arrived home that evening, I felt compelled to question him. However, he was in a foul mood, as if something had occurred at work. He flung his luggage and removed his clothing. Then I went to take a shower without saying anything. After a while, he walked out and stated, "I will not need dinner today. I don't have any hunger." And he started to return to his room. I'd already prepared a supper for two at the table, and I suspected my husband was cheating on me, so his attitude upset me. There's no reason to talk like that. If you didn't need dinner, you could have told me sooner. Don't leave your clothing or bag around. I've been concerned about my husband's sloppiness for a while. I typically do not say it to him, but today I felt compelled to say something about it. So I said something like that to my husband. "Huh? Shut up, old hag." He spat out the words and returned to his room. I was astonished that he referred to me as an old hag when I was still in my mid-20s. My annoyance of my husband's attitude reached a fever pitch. I ate a full supper for two, had a bath, and watched a movie in the living room alone because tomorrow was my day off from work. I fell asleep before I realized it, and when I glanced into my husband's room in the morning, he had left. I searched the front door but found no shoes. I figured he had gone for a walk or something, but he never returned home. Yesterday's attitude, abandoning his pregnant wife without saying anything, cheating and failing to return home, pushed me to the limit. I immediately got online and looked up numerous companies that specialize in investigating cases. Then I spoke with a private detective. He had a great rating, and I requested that he gather solid evidence for me, as I was willing to pay him anything for his services. Then, a few days after I had a cold battle with my spouse, I woke up with an unsettled stomach and couldn't concentrate at work. Then my supervisor, who was concerned about me, suggested that I consult an obstetrician just to be sure. I left work early and headed to the hospital, where I was told I was going into preterm labor. She didn't know what was causing it, but she assured me that resting would be beneficial. I assumed I had put my baby at risk as a result of the stress I had been experiencing in recent days. I burst into tears of frustration. Then I made it home and turned the key. I opened the door with a sign, and what I saw shocked me. At the front entrance, my spouse and a young woman I didn't know were embracing. I imagined they didn't expect me to return home, so they just stared at each other with widening eyes. Then my husband, who had recovered his calm first, raged at me. "Why are you already home?" My husband glares at me as he quickly adjusts the sagging of his clothes and removes the woman's lipstick from his lips. Despite the fact that she has seen me, the woman remains remarkably calm and smiles mockingly. What the woman on the same floor informed me was correct. "Hello, Elijah. You were supposed to be working right now, correct? I noticed you have skipped work to play with that female at home without hesitation." I gave them a disdainful look, but they didn't appear to hear me. Instead, my stubborn spouse whispered this as if it were second nature. "I'm bored with an old hag. Your pregnancy has caused me to dislike having to constantly put up with you. Please leave." At the time, I felt a huge shock run through my body. I was carrying a child with my spouse in my womb and was attempting to raise it. How could he complain that his needs weren't being met? When the affair partner heard this, she laughed uncontrollably, and with tears in her eyes, she exclaimed, "That is Heredias. When we graduate from college, we'll all be old hags, right? I'm really sorry for stealing your husband, the next president of the company, from this statement." It was decided that she was in college or younger. I understood this to some extent because I had done some studying, but I naturally burst out laughing at their remarks. "Oh, are you sure? Are you really going to break up with me? I am going to charge your aunt money. Will you pay it?" When I mentioned that, my spouse became nervous for a second. However, he quickly fled. I suppose common ladies are extremely thirsty for money, aren't they? It hurts to see. "Okay, fair enough. I'll pay your price." He stated that his affair partner was aware of his marital status yet continued to have an affair with him. So I replied that I'd charge her as well. I will also pay her share. He's got an easygoing, mature demeanor, and the woman becomes insane at the sight of it. What exactly am I being shown? Anyway, it happened right when I was going to start talking about divorce and alimony, so I suppose I was fortunate. Witnessing the two of them in action was a massive mistake, but it was a good one. It spared me some trouble. Later that day, I packed my bags and returned to my parents' place. The next day, I received a call from my spouse, crying, "Wait a minute. Are you the daughter of Smith's president?" "What about the huge pharmaceutical company? I never heard anything about it." It appears that my husband finally realized that I was the daughter of the president of a well-known pharmaceutical company in the area, or rather that this was unavoidable. Yesterday, I returned home and informed my parents, who were surprised to see me, that the two of them had been engaging in their daily activities in broad daylight, abused me, and declared a divorce. I had hired a private detective, so everything went smoothly. My father, who had heard the story, was upset and immediately contacted my husband's father, asking, "What kind of education are you providing your son?" My daughter arrived home injured. "No more discussion of the project. I will not do business with your firm again." Yes, our company and my husband's company have a business partnership, and our company has a great position. My spouse is in charge of outside sales, while I am primarily in charge of bookkeeping. Therefore, we didn't have to deal with each other, so he probably didn't know. He had no notion I worked for a business partner company and was the president's daughter. Naturally, my father called my husband's father, or father-in-law, and was angry. He quickly contacted my husband and invited him over. My husband got the full truth there, and he panicked and contacted me. This is what's happened thus far. The flow has changed in just one day since my announcement. And my spouse, who is stressed out, is now saying to me, "I admit I was wrong, so please don't divorce me." If our company and Smith's Pharma stop doing business, our company will suffer significant damage. He is desperate to repair our relationship. But I'd already decided on an answer. After abandoning your pregnant wife and leaving work to make out with another lady during the day, you were the one who forced me to leave, claiming that you were weary of an old hag, correct? If you're going to be the next president, you should at least accept responsibility for your remarks. When I said this in an angry tone, my spouse fell silent. I'm wondering what he thought he could do to make me forgive him. Nonetheless, I am confident that if he backs down now, his organization will face major consequences. it is unavoidable that he will be removed from his role as successor. So at that point, he hung up the phone as if he were giving up. However, the next day, he appeared in front of my parents' house and apologized outside the door. He yelled, which I heard from my father, "Smith and I were planning a large project together. If we divorce, that is completely out of the question. Please reconsider." My spouse apologized for a minute. The next moment, he is passionately pleading for forgiveness with phrases of self-preservation. I was humiliated to admit that I ever loved such a person. Although I ignored him for a while, my spouse showed no signs of giving up. Then my father, who was reading the newspaper, drank all of his coffee. He set the cup down forcefully and proceeded to the front door. "And then go home. I will never allow a Trump like you to see my daughter again. I'll have you see a lawyer from now on. If you do not leave now, I will contact the police." He spoke with the expression of a devil. My husband went pale and departed, but just when I thought he was gone, he returned. This time, my father-in-law accompanied him. "Mr. President, I sincerely apologize for what my dumb kid has done. I'll make him pay for injuring your daughter. So please only the project." Even after hearing this, my father's feelings did not appear to change, and he said he'd never do business with them again. My father-in-law's complexion deteriorated, and he appeared to be on the verge of collapse. My husband is shivering as he knows he is endangering the lives of not only his parents but also all of the employees. This was not going to go well, and I had something to tell my father-in-law. I decided to settle the situation here. I had been at my parents' place for a long time and had suddenly appeared, so my husband's face lit up as he approached me. But when I shook his hand and scowled at him as he reached over to me, he was speechless. I gave him little time to catch his breath and said, "You are a married man, and she has a fiancé who works, and I heard her fiancé works for a competitor of yours." Perhaps because he had never experienced my rejection so forcefully before, my husband blinks rapidly as if he understands what I'm saying. My father-in-law, who did not appear to understand the issue, glanced at my husband suspiciously. I told him all I learned from the detective. "This man is revealing valuable company information to her." Then my spouse turned away and fled. "He couldn't do that. Elijah, do you know anything about this?" My father-in-law responded swiftly, grabbing my husband's hand to stop him. My husband was shivering with dread, and all he could do was smile uncomfortably. Seeing my husband in such a terrible situation, I sighed and continued. "The woman with whom he was having an affair appears to have been lonely because her fiancé had not been caring for her recently. So she approached Elijah, the son of the rival company's president, and duped him into disclosing confidential information. She gave it to her fiancé to gain his attention. You know what? She was simply using you." When I stated this to my husband with a cold expression in my eyes, he slowly opened his mouth and blurted out something like this. "It was no coincidence that I met her, so she was the one who set everything up. Oh no, we promised to get married if I left you." My spouse, understanding he was in the worst conceivable scenario, sank to his knees. The woman, who he had never questioned, had been an enemy agent. He loses his wife during the process. I could not think of a better term to characterize it than calamity. Finally, this man was only seen as the son of the company's president, and he was merely being utilized. He must be damned for abandoning his pregnant wife for his own misguided desires. After I finished speaking, I looked at my father-in-law. "Oh my God, you not only wrecked our relationship with Smith's Pharmaceuticals, but you also disclosed information to a competitor company. Are you attempting to damage our company?" He glanced at his son with sadness and as much anger as he could muster. My husband couldn't help but apologize to me further, and he realized he'd done something irreversible, and he just froze on the spot. For a moment, the mood was thick and somber, reminiscent of a funeral. My father, who was witnessing what was going on behind me, said, "Go home now. I have no further use for you." With that, my husband and father-in-law left. Following that, our company's business with my father-in-law was immediately suspended. They couldn't respond and had to accept the cancellation of business. We also had to cope with the leak of confidential information. I can imagine the personnel feeling overwhelmed by the scenario. I was told that they were so fatigued that many of them resigned. Finally, the large project was shelved. My husband's company has gone bankrupt. This includes the harm resulting from the disclosure of private information. At this juncture, a divorce settlement was reached, marking the official end of my marriage to Elijah and ushering in a new chapter of unfamiliarity. As previously stipulated, I sought substantial alimony and child support from my ex-husband, including contributions from his affair partner. However, while Elijah agreed to provide his share of financial support, he adamantly refused to cover her portion. Undeterred by his refusal, I pursued legal action to claim the alimony owed by the affair partner. It wasn't long before her fiancé, unaware of the affair until then, confronted her upon receiving a certified letter detailing the affair. With this revelation, a resolution was reached, with her fiancé proposing a business arrangement wherein he would cover her financial obligations in exchange for collaboration with his company. A proposition aligned with our mutual interests and the imperative to seek new business partnerships due to Elijah's company's insolvency. Despite initial hesitations, I agreed to the arrangement, recognizing that it was her decision to disclose the affair and her fiancé's involvement was not unwarranted. Ultimately, the collaboration proved fruitful, leading to the success of our joint project and fostering a positive business relationship. Meanwhile, Elijah turned to his sister for support after being disowned by his parents. Reports from a mutual acquaintance revealed a stark contrast in his circumstances, as he now resides in modest accommodations and works multiple jobs to make ends meet, a consequence of his familial and professional fallout. On my part, I welcome the arrival of my healthy son despite his biological connection to Elijah. Determined to provide him with a nurturing yet disciplined upbringing, I ensured that he wouldn't follow in his father's footsteps. Thankfully, my family's financial stability and my own employment ensured that we didn't face financial hardship. In addition to our new family member, we found joy in the companionship of a dog and a cat. With my parents, my son, and our furry friends by our side, we found happiness and contentment in our shared home.